So the idea here is to kind of request clarification again. Right? We'll kind of go right back into the Columbo tactics, right? Our best defense with people like this is just to refuse to play their game, right? And to ask clarifying questions to make sure that they understand, that we understand what they're doing. So he gives us an example here. He says, the atheist says this: if there were no hell, would you still be a Christian? Wow, right? If there were no hell, would you still be a Christian? Is the question. Right.
And see how easy it is. Just go, yes, of course. But there are a lot of implications within that question.
I wouldn't. Well, what, right? Right. He says the query seems innocent enough. On the surface, of course, we wouldn't be a Christian strictly speaking, he says, if there were no hell. There would be no need for Christianity if there were no need for hell. But he says it's a trick question. Why? Well, it's cleverly designed to diminish Christianity to a carrot and sticks enterprise, right? By suggesting that believers become Christians merely to get the carrot of heaven and avoid the stick of hell. No threat of the stick, no reason to believe. Faith is reduced to creaturely pleasure or pain, self-interest, and nothing more, right? So that's kind of the purpose of the question, right? He says that's not at all what Christianity is all about, right? He says, here's the issue. What the atheists miss, he tells us in asking this question, is that we have not been rescued for something, heaven, hell, whatever, right? We haven't been rescued for something. We have been rescued for someone, the true and the living God, right? So we have been saved for the intimate, personal, loving relationship that God desires to share with us from the beginning, even before there was a need for a place called hell. And so that's what they missed. It's not about the thing or the place, it's about the person, right? It's about God. And so the atheist poses this kind of hypothetical and as a rhetorical trap that we need to be aware of. And so he says the believers should have requested clarification, right? Here are a couple of examples. All right, you ready? He says, so here's the question: if there were no hell, would you still be a Christian? I think all we really need is this one example.
I like this one.
Right?
Yeah.
He says the Christian could say something like this, right? I'm confused by your question. Are you asking, would I still trust Christ to die and save me from hell if there were no hell? What does that mean, right?
That's a question.
That makes no sense. Or are you asking, would I still want to be with Christ forever if there were no hell to avoid? What exactly is your point in this question, right? So here you're asking clarifying questions. You're trying to help them to bring out the point that they're trying to make. Yeah. The question really is, it makes no sense when you really think about it, right?
Yeah, is it either a question that makes no sense, which probably they don't want to admit that they're asking, or are they asking about a relationship aspect that we have with Christ? Well, sure. I mean, I'll continue to go down that route if that's what you're asking. And again, what's happening? Columbo tactics is asking the same thing. So it's kind of like asking, if there were no tax rebate for being married, would you still be married? It's not about the tax rebate. Hopefully it's not about the tax rebate. If that's all it takes for you to get married, man. Yeah. I'm married because I want to be close to the person who I want to be my wife. And so it's not a tax rebate is kind of the icing on the cake, if you will. Yeah. And so
it's a misleading question.
Right. And a perfect time to ask clarification. Maybe this person generally believes that that's all it is. God's this dude in robes in the sky with a big beard. You don't really interact with him. Jesus kind of saves you, and that's it. Like, you go play with harps, it sounds super boring, and that's all there is to heaven. And so it's or they've just heard that mantra in atheist community before, and so they're just asking kind of an easy question because they've remembered it. It's the bumper sticker kind of theology there, which isn't good on either side.
So would you if there were no hell, would you still be a Christian? Well, it's not about the place. It's not about heaven or hell. It's about my relationship with God. It's about a person, right? It's about my loving Heavenly Father who I get to be with for eternity. That's what it's really about, right? And so, what exactly are you asking me here, right? And so the question really, once you analyze it, is kind of not making any sense, right? And so he says here, generally speaking, when an atheist poses a question that you're not sure of, though, you can ask for clarification. Here's another way to answer that question if you're stuck. Right? What do you do if you're stuck and you're not sure exactly what to say? Well, he says you could say something like this. That's an interesting question. That's not occurred to me before. See, so you're just being honest with folks, right? So I'm not going to give you an answer. Notice you're in charge of your side of the conversation, right? I'm not going to give you an answer, a quick answer. I need to think about it a bit because a hasty answer may give you the wrong impression. What do you think is at stake here? And so you reverse the burden of proof, and get them to explain exactly what they're talking about, right? And so that's another way of dealing with these types of questions. Again, you're in control of your side of the conversation, right? And so you need to remember that as you're doing these things.
And he does here have, generally speaking, when the atheist presses you with questions you're not sure how to answer, ask for clarification. Perfectly fine in any conversation. Isn't that what someone would want from you if you're going off on something that they have no clue what you're talking about, but you're wanting to have a conversation? Hold on, let me stop you there. Let me ask you, what do you mean by that? Kind of those questions. So here's some more examples. Help me out here. What specifically are you getting at with your question? Another one is, there are probably a number of ways to answer that depending. What do you have in mind? Of course, any person can be mistaken about what he believes. So could I. Good. I'd have to consider conflicting evidence, though. Where are you headed with these questions? Sure, I'd change my mind if there were no good reasons to believe what I do and good reasons to believe something else. What do you suggest? There you go. There's a perfect reversing the burden of proof. What evidence would cause me to change my mind? I'm not sure I can tell you in advance. I have to consider particular objections. What were you thinking? Think of all the things that you didn't think about before and tell me which one's the best. Yes. How about I just stay with the one that I like? You asked how I would know if I were delusional. I have no reason to think I'm experiencing delusion. Why would you think I am? And why would you label an inaccurate belief a delusion? You've had inaccurate beliefs, haven't you? Does that make you delusional too? Again, asking these questions. So, he goes into clarifying questions that kind of help us move the conversation forward and to get out of the bad leading questions. Right.
So how would you know if you're delusional? So are you saying I'm delusional? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Am I delusional in saying that I'm delusional? Maybe I'm delusional in my delusion. Yeah.
So, a leading question. So are you saying that, just because someone may have a false belief that they're delusional?
Right.
Have you ever had false beliefs?
The red pen has come out a few times on my math papers before. So am I delusional? No, I'm just wrong.
Yeah. How do you define, what do you mean by delusional anyway?
Right. Yeah. And how easy is it to see that in comment sections on the internet? This is just wishful thinking. You're delusional. It helps you sleep at night. You're lying, and this is the best way to help you convince other people that you're sane. We've all heard it before.
And so we ask clarifying questions and we ask leading questions, right? And we reverse the burden of proof. We use all of the things to help clarify, bring to the surface exactly what they're talking about, and help them to see what they're talking about, right? Again, this is not to be flippant with the person and to be mean and ugly, but we're trying to clarify. We're trying to help them understand what they're saying, and we want to understand what they're saying too. And so we ask these various questions, these Columbo questions, right?
And sometimes it's maybe not best to engage in those people at all, especially online. It's super easy just to close the window. So, kind of pick your battles there.